Welcome to the Keen on Yoga podcast, bringing you the stories of many people who in various ways are attempting to walk the path of yoga. Our intention is to inspire your own practice and commitment to yoga beyond the mat and in all areas of life. We consider this an offering, a service to the community and labour of love. If you feel inclined, any donations are appreciated. Just visit our page and click the donate button at www.keenonyoga.co.uk/podcast. I hope you enjoy the show. Today's guest for the second time on the Keen on Yoga podcast is Alex Medin. Today, I especially, however, wanted to focus on his more recent work in his native Norway, where he's established a highly successful charitable project called Back in the Ring. Back in the Ring brings yoga to prisoners, many of those serving long-term sentences, as well as offering them help, training, and even upon release, work at his hotel, Norsen, I probably said that wrong, in the Norwegian fjords. The project was started by Alex in 2015, has been so successful, they have now received funding from the government and expanded the teaching team to almost all the prisons in Norway, and now even the ex-prisoners are teachers as well. So Alex himself has led a checkered life, in fact, and in his early years, he spent some time in prison, and then he became a boxer, and finally a Norwegian champion boxer, then trained as a professional dancer, using his savings from his years in crime, and finally ended up becoming a teacher of Ashtanga, which is where we know him now. And he's taught for over 20 years at this point. In 2002, he became certified, in fact, by Butabi Joyce, which is still a rare accolade. But while spending time in India, Alex, who never just rests, studied and achieved a master's degree in Sanskrit, and he's translated the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita to Norwegian, as well as producing a well-known translation of Krishnamacharya's Yoga Makaranda. So I've known Alex for a while now, and Alex, more than anyone, I've appreciated his intense individuality and just unfathomable energy. He's truly someone trying to live a life in yoga and to the highest level. So that involves inquiry and self-reflection, which really comes through as one continuous thread, I feel, that links all Alex's incarnations together. So welcome, Alex, the second time, Alex Medin, to the Keen on Yoga podcast, and I'm very pleased to have you on this episode, particularly discussing Alex's charitable work with Back in the Ring and his work with yoga and addiction, etc. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Adam. Very nice to be here.
It's lovely to have you again. And I wonder if you could just give a better description than I just did of the work that you're doing now and currently in Norway.
In the short, Back in the Ring is like a organization that try to provide yoga and so we do so many things, but to keep it short, we use yoga and the principles of yoga to help people with addiction and people who've been to prison to kind of build up their life again and pick themselves up and see that they can be active contributors of society rather than live on the fringes and kind of get caught up in very destructive patterns for themselves and others.
How did you start that? Like, how did you get into it? And what were I know, like you've been on the yoga scene for a long time. We had a little chat beforehand about how you were traveling, doing the normal thing of the workshops and the teacher trainings and, different kind of normal-esque yoga things for someone who's certified as you are. What motivated you to come home back to Sweden and to start this, and how did you start? Just to paint a broader picture.
First of all, I'm from Norway, and that's the neighboring country to Sweden.
Sorry, I know you're from Norway.
That's okay.
No, Alex, sorry. I know you're from
Norway.
I
lived in Sweden for many years, so that's maybe why you got confused. I lived in Sweden.
No, complete slip.
For 7 years. But despite of that, I grew up and had a relatively good life till I was about 15, 16. Came from a poor background and stuff, but still life was okay. And then at the time I was about 15, 16, I got involved with some drugs and, the police, and I spent some time in prison and things like that. Luckily, I had a very good boxing teacher that saw me, guided me, and demanded some focus, and he was able to help me kind of channel my energy.
So you actually went to prison?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, no, I spent time in prison. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Okay. So this actually comes from deep within this whole thing you're doing now, right? Like from your own experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the thing, like when you spend time in prison, like, and I was incarcerated for, when I was young, I would be caught by the police, and sometimes they keep me in custody for 24, 48 hours or longer, trying to force some proof out of me or whatever. But they couldn't really keep me that long. There were like laws and regulations when you were under 18. It got stricter, of course, if there was a more serious offense. But I remember every time when you're locked down and you are on just what it's like in a plain kind of custody cell, waiting to get into the bigger prison before you have to go to court. You're in a very small cell, and it's just a concrete floor, and you have a little hole in the corner where you can make a pee. And in one point, I would spend 100 hours in a cell like that. And when you're only like 16, 17 years old, it does something to your mind. I mean, either you freak out or you become very hard. And I became a bit hard and, said, I'm not going to surrender to these people. But still, this hard, outer armor or shell on the inside, I was totally miserable, confused, lonely, and lost. And I remember that feeling very well, of feeling lost inside the prison many times and desperate. But then I would do a lot of push-ups or work up just to kind of keep away the feelings, or try to get sidetracked into something. And that feeling of desperation, of being lonely and left by yourself, and kind of having no tool to get out of your mind, and you felt just like trapped in your mind with thoughts and worries and troubles, and worrying about your friends and stuff that had happened. And when many years later, I was lucky. I moved to Sweden when I was 18, and I got away from that whole scene. And but still, I carried this kind of inner trauma with me, in a way, of feeling lost and a little lonely, and never really felt Sorry, did you have
two questions that arise? Do you find a point? Did you trace it to a point when it started, a feeling that started you on that bad track, and what was the point that switched when you said, I got out of it? Well, I mean, many people don't. There must have been a moment when you just thought to yourself, this has got to change, or what was that? So how did you enter it, and how did you exit it?
Yeah. Well, the entry into it is a slippery slope, and the exit too is a very, depending on many circumstances. But the turning point for me it's like when I got introduced to some drugs and started taking drugs, and also started crossing some borderlines what comes to like acceptable life in society. I started, stealing things, from various shops. It also just started very silly, like with stealing bikes and stealing cars and stuff like that. And then we started breaking into shops at night, and then ended up that I became very good at blowing safes, so I became specialized in using dynamite, opening safes. And so I that's how I financed my first year at the Ballet Academy in Sweden. I came there and just kind of with a lot of cash, and paid for But despite of all that, there are many funny sides to the story too, of things we have done, which was
a ballet safe
crazy. No, but that was before. I was a boxer before that.
You're a boxer and then ballet.
A ballet. Just by, yeah. But anyway, the reason why I got out was primarily one thing, that I moved away from Norway, and I moved from a lot of my friends, and I didn't keep so much contact with them. And the other thing was that I was training boxing, so I had to be fit because I was doing tournaments and things like that. And the other thing is, like, when I was 20 years old, I got a son, and I didn't want him to visit his father in prison. So I was very adamant and deliberate. Okay, now it's enough. And unfortunately, a lot of my friends from that period, they continue, and some of them did a lot of armed robberies. They robbed banks. They robbed money transports. And they all got caught up in prison. And a few of them, got caught up on heavier drugs and became heroin addicts. Some of them died. Some of them got stabbed, and some of them ended up just living a very tragic life. And when I moved back to Norway, I had the privilege of living in Sweden then from basically 87 to 2000 to 96. And then I later moved to England, and then Asia, and then when I came back to Norway in 2009, I was very happy just helping out, teaching yoga in a yoga studio where I was part of Puro Yoga in Oslo, and we developed a very nice community there, and I was teaching Mysore style every day. And I was also, since I was certified in 2002, I had some invitation to go abroad, but that didn't really appeal to me, because every time I went abroad teaching, and I lived in Hong Kong for many years, and they tried to portray me as like master of yoga, and I felt it was so ridiculous, because I knew how little I knew and how much it takes to really go into the depths of something. So I didn't want to. I just felt it didn't feel satisfying to me, being like a celebrity yoga teacher, trying to be somebody, or trying to just make money off yoga. So when I moved back to Norway in 2009, I just wanted to stay in Oslo and wanted to serve my community there. And I was actually very, very happy, and developed a very good Mysore program in Oslo. And then around 2011, I contacted some people in a prison called Ila, where a lot of the long-term sentences are. And I just offered my services once a week for free, and then it was twice a week, and then it started more. And a lot of the guys inside had a long yearning to learn more about yoga. And the reason why I wanted to bring yoga to the prisons was, of course, because I knew that when I was in prison, if I have had that tool, if I had that method, I could have spared myself from many, negative moments later, and being careless and reckless with people. It would have taught me a much softer approach to life. To me, it took me, 10 years in the ballet world, being beaten, of never feeling good enough, and then another, 20 years in the yoga world to kind of sweat your body, turn your body inside out. And then, to me, it was, I wanted to share what I had and what I've learned. And that's how gangster yoga started. That's what it was called in the prison. But then in 2013, I started this program for drug addicts.
And how? I mean, on a practical note, how do you start it? Like, what do you actually do when you're in there? Like, how does it? Like, for me, I'm just kind of thinking, when you walk in there, like, okay, so when you're saying you're sharing the yoga with them, when you're saying you're going into, like, what does that look like for people that I'm very curious to know how you do that? It depends on
if you are in a high security prison or a more kind of open prison, it's more liberal and easier. But if you're in a high security prison, like, you walk through at least 10 to 15 locked doors before you actually get into the very room where you're teaching yoga. And sometimes there's a guard, and other times you ask the guard to leave, and I'm just along with the guys. And in the beginning, you know, I think why it became popular and why we succeeded was probably because I told my story to the guys pretty soon, and I told them, look, guys, I've been doing time as well. I know how you feel, because in prison there's a very tough mentality, and like I also used to be a boxer, and I had a kind of hard surface, and I know how lost people feel behind that. And I know a lot of people inside, they just lift weights and they're trying to be tough and hard, but on the inside they're very lost and lonely. And I just tried to, you know, play with that attitude in the beginning of being cool and being, you know, silly. And then after a while, I would do my best just to break down those barriers and help them to feel our kind of shared humanness. And what gangster yoga is really about is for, first of all, is like, if you got the balls to do it, and then if you dare to lower your guard and take in life. And some people are very hungry for that. Some people are not mature enough to do it, and they kind of they don't really bother. But for those who I mean, there's some people that I've worked with in prison that are now working as full-time yoga teachers.
Right, that was one of my questions.
Right, very stimulating to see that these guys are now offering their services to society. You know. With the back in the ring, sorry.
What do you actually? Sorry, I was going to say. I mean, so you're just. How are you teaching them? Do you start with just the primary series, or like? I mean, you kind of sit down and kind of talk. Okay, guys, let's crack open the Bhagavad Gita, have a study. You know, like, what does it look? I mean, what does it look like? And the other thing is, I mean, that kind of is on my mind is, I mean, like, you're dismissing the guard, and now, I mean, you must have had some risky moments. It sounds quite courageous of you.
No, a few times there's been a few, you know, hiccups between some of the inmates, but we always able to solve that, you know, so that's not a big problem. If you dare to kind of, just kind of be strict and clear with people. But how I actually teach them is, you know, first I basically try to lie them down on the floor and relax and breathe. And just get in contact with the breath. And I'll do some very soft, gentle stretching exercises to just calm down. Because a lot of them, they're full of stress and tension and irritation and fatigue, you know, from just kind of being disconnected from themselves and others. So I'll focus on just the breath, keeping it easy, just very relaxed. And after about maybe 15, 20 minutes of this soft, gentle exercises, I normally start the sun salutations, and I normally do like the Ashtanga sequence with them. I do it, of course, very modified. Of course, it's impossible for them to do anything beyond Marichasana, to Navasana, basically. They do Marichasana A and C, and then maybe we do some Navasana, and then normally we do some of the variations at the end, but cut out, of course, you know, Kurmasana, Bhujapidasana, and those postures. But
so none of them, you find none of them are able to do that.
Sorry?
None of them are able to do those.
Yeah, no, it's impossible. Most of them have very stiff knees, and so it doesn't make any sense to try to do that. But we do like a steady practice, really focusing on the breath and relaxing and not trying to perform and be something, turning their gaze inward and just really being present here and now. And then we normally do the closing, and we do a little meditation at the end. And after Shavasana, sometimes I do a little talk with them where we have like a topic, because in Back in the Ring, we have some foundation pillars that I'm enormously grateful to the yoga and the method that yoga give, which is, of course, the basis for everything we do. And I introduced them to some japa meditation where they, I give them like a mantra to practice, or I give them a japa mala and say, hey, when you're in the cell, try this meditation and see how it works for you if you want, and some of them really, really enjoy that. And then, but in addition to the kind of yoga practice and, the practice of asana and pranayama, I always try to introduce them to some philosophy, just some kind of existential inquiry to, what are we doing here, and what did our life turn into, and where are we, and where are we going in a way. And the kind of main focus that I have we have some pillars in Back in the Ring that is very much about bringing safety internally, because a lot of them are very tense and irritable, or are always like caught up in a kind of fight or flight mode. And when you are always restless inside, it's very hard to turn your gaze inwards and bring about steadiness in the mind, because you're so alert on the outside. We kind of, sorry if I'm talking too long.
No, at all.
Always like
it's great. That's great.
But I just wanted to say, like, what we talk about is like, I always try to talk to them about some foundation pillars, which basically the first 3 foundation pillars, what I spend a lot of time on trying to make them land and be more present here and now, is honesty. Honesty, faith, and humility. That's something I spend a lot of time on, like their capability of just organizing and understanding their own thoughts, their feelings, what goes on in their mind, and to kind of, so we do some exercises regarding honesty, some exercises, how much faith are they actually able to have in themselves, in their process, in other things. And then another important element is, of course, humility, because once the thing with drug addicts or former inmates is it's very easy to bring about a quick change, but when things start to go well, then some people lose their humility. They kind of get high on life or high on themselves, or just boosted by things that are going well, and that's when a lot of people actually fall and fall back into old pattern. And then in the second phase, which is the kind of transformative phase, we work a lot on topics such as patience. How to develop patience to bring about change takes time. One needs to be very vigilant and alert with kind of how you handle life and what you choose to do every day, and how you organize yourself. And then, of course, discipline, like tapas, is an important element, like vyasa, tapas.
What is their primary struggle? Because I would have thought that you should speed up the sequence to make them more kind of enlivened, but you're saying you teach them quite slowly. I would have expected that they would want to do. I mean, when you were saying you would have loved it if someone had come in and taught you Ashtanga and you were doing the push-ups, I think, and I'm knowing you a little bit, you would have wanted something quite dynamic, something quite strong. Yeah. So, they don't want that. You're not teaching them kind of, third series arm balances, or you're teaching them kind of something that's, it seems like you're teaching them something quite a kind of hatha yoga style. They prefer that.
No, but in order for them to just open the door of receptivity, I have to calm them down, and I just have to help them lower the guard and relax a bit. So I always open a bit gently, sometimes 10 minutes, only 15 minutes, but always something gentle in the beginning, just to make them land and be present here and now. And then sometimes, depending on who is in class, if there's more of a younger crowd, then of course we can work in a more swifter pace. And of course they love to try some arm balances or something like that, but none of them are really, it's more if I've worked with them for a while. But for me, what I've learned is that you can really whip people through a practice and make them feel like great physically and strong, but it doesn't really sink in if you bring about some balance in the nervous system. And the more I spend time just preparing them a little bit for class, then my experience, they get more out of it. So I have to kind of balance the class with softness, and of course that kind of workout, which they also like. But in the end, it's always returning to a soft inner steadiness, presence of mind.
One reason that, I mean, obviously we've talked before, and I really like what you have to say. But I mean, one reason I kind of got in touch again with on this interview is having talked to Taylor about his work, with addiction. And one thing that really resonated, what really struck me talking to Taylor, was he said the addict is inherently skeptical. They're inherently they're disbelief, right? There's a great kind of distrust, and you mentioned faith and trying to engender a faith in other things and a faith in oneself. How do you present the practice to people that are potentially very skeptical of their own ability? Why bother doing the practice? What's this tradition? How do you present the yoga? I mean, do you talk about Mysore, or how does that go?
Well, first of all, I mean, heroin addicts are very different people, like all kinds of people. You could say that, some addicts are very skeptical, and they have, but what I have found is like most of them, they're just like totally disconnected. And if you can just help to connect them with life, with breath themselves, then good things start to happen. I work with people in prisons and of course heroin addicts in a little different way. With the heroin addicts, I have a much softer approach also in the beginning, and then I try to make them work. You could say progress through the series, although very few of them make it, beyond primary series. But the focus.
One question that comes to mind. Sorry to break you up, Alex. Can you notice then trends between different people in prison, like different,
if I can notice
trends between different types of people that are in prison? So you can say, well, certain, like, I work with these people in this way, and these people that are, struggling with this in this way.
Okay, yeah. Well, basically, people in prison, in general, they are more caught up. They have a very hard surface, and some of them are tough on the outside, but very helpless and weak on the inside. That's just a very broad generalization. And a lot of drug addicts, they could live the okay life and are okay, but a lot of them have a lot of shame and guilt, and they are very kind of more held in themselves in a way. That is my experience. So the classes don't vary so much, but with the heroin addicts, I'm usually a little bit more careful with the physical approach, because a lot of them are weaker, and it takes them time to build their strength up again. And so with the drug addicts, I'm a little more prone to kind of the gentle yoga approach, and then I build them up gradually with steady sun salutation, and then sun salutation B, and then more standing posture, things like that. But and of course a lot of the heroin addicts love to get back in shape and get strong, but there is a general, a lot of them they get fatigued very easily, and they give up very easily. So to them, it's a little more gentle approach.
And what do you say? I mean, what do you say to people that are? I mean, are they all really up for it when they get into your class? Are they up for it, or do you have to motivate them? And how do you do that?
It depends. I mean, some people, depends on who they are. Like, if their problem have been, drug addicts are very, not all are heroin addicts. Some are like methamphetamine, a lot of, coke or whatever, and they are a little, very different in their whole nervous system. But in general, now kind of Back in the Ring has their own name in the kind of rehab institutions and prisons in Norway. So people know about it. They know that it's challenging. They have to work. They have to give an effort themselves. But how we motivate them is basically when we sit down in a floor in a circle and just talk prior to the class or after the class.
Okay.
That's where as much of the teaching is happening, of like building a community, of just helping them to open up and express themselves and create a room where they can be. And where we also, I feel that a lot of the beauty of the teachings happen when I'm able to just like help accept them as they are, and give them a space to just be themselves. And then good things happen from that. And then of course I can be very strict with them sometime and say like, okay guys, if you want to do this, we have to, let's try to set some standards and some principles, and please try to show up for the next 4 or 5 times so we can experience what this is. If you just come once, not much going to happen, but
is it just you teaching,
I feel that,
by the way?
No, it's not me. I mean, now the beauty of Back in the Ring now is like we have more than 20 people, teachers all around Norway.
Right, okay.
And a lot of them are former inmates and drug addicts. And the best teachers we have in Back in the Ring is actually former inmates and drug addicts.
Well,
because we tried a lot of professional teachers too, which is like famous, celebrities in Norway or whatever who's doing yoga. And sometimes they have a influence, of course, but those who have been there themselves and kind of felt the pain that a lot of these people have been in and really understood it, they have a different way of reaching across. They have a different ways will say, come on guys, let's straighten up our acts and let's try to do something here. And they have a different way of understanding the people's inner problems and turmoil when they get...
Sure. How often do they get a class? How often do you go in?
It depends. And I mean, now Back in the Ring is kind of has an existing program in 25 cities or small towns around Norway. And in some places like Oslo, there's 4 to 5 classes a week. And other places, this class is only once a week. And then we are also existing in 15 prisons. And then some prisons, there's only once a week, and other prisons, it's like twice a week.
Do you encourage them to do some self-practice in between? And do they manage to do that?
Definitely. Right. That is the whole goal. And we have this thing that if you've been to yoga class, 10 times you get a t-shirt. If you've gone 20 times, you get a yoga mat. So a lot of them, come at least 20 times, so they get their own yoga mat.
Right.
So the whole focus on what we do is trying to encourage people to do that self-practice, even if it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes every day, just with some breathing exercises and sun salutation. That's what we're trying to build them up towards to do. That's our main aim.
I mean, I've never been to prison, but I mean, I got into it through struggling really with my own difficulties with anxiety, and then self-medicating through alcohol, really. And the main thing I found was, obviously, one, you've got your breathing, but second, you've got a routine. You've got a routine that's there, like a kind of, that sets your day up, right? So I would imagine, and this is fundamental that they.
And we all need, and the beauty. I mean, when you're able to introduce a good yoga practice to people who have been caught up in drugs and prison or been disassociated from life, when they feel hooked again and that they start feeling connected again, the experience from where they have been is so solid. So some of them who really go deeper into it, they don't go back to drugs and prison. And now for the last few years, we've done a bit of a kind of analysis, and 50 to 60% of all the people we work with are doing good now and are staying off the drugs and not getting back to prison. So we're kind of happy with that. So it's good statistics.
What's the biggest challenge with it? With practice and with keeping up our practice? Can you see one consistent challenge that they face?
One of them is, of course, discipline, because a lot of them, they're different personalities, but for some it is discipline, it is patience, it is kind of consistency for many of them.
Well, it's no different to us.
But for some, it's like, for a lot of the people who have been doing drugs for a long time, they've been caught up in their rituals of cooking and getting their lines lined up.
Right, it's just a different ritual. They like a ritual.
So it's a new ritual. They really like it.
Easy.
It's a better ritual.
Yeah. And what about you? What's the biggest challenge that you face with it?
Well, I feel just immensely grateful for the whole process, because since I started this, my life lit up in so many ways, and I was blessed in innumerable ways. First of all, it was like I started doing this thing just because I wanted to give something back, and I used some of my own savings and brought 10 people to India, took them around Norway, doing various works and stuff like that. But then a few years later, the government started to recognize some of my work, and they give us some support. And we are actually able to pay a lot of teachers in Norway to work with this and keep this place consistency. And then I was also so fortunate to find this old mountain lodge, which is, it was an old Dilleric place up in the mountain which I kind of did up with a lot of people from, former inmates and former drug addicts that came to help me and do it up. And now we have this beautiful place. So that I feel infinitely grateful for. So,
and that's when they get out, they can go there.
Yeah, well, we just we offer our services, and for whoever wants to come and live with us for some time, they can come and live with us, and they help out with doing some work, and they practice yoga with us, and they live there, and they try to develop some new healthy patterns. But the greatest struggle for me, I guess, lately has just been, I'm just been overworked with so many things. So it's hard to keep up with, 25 towns or cities around Norway and follow it up properly. And 15 teachers, and making sure all of the teachers deliver their best. And so it's kind of hard to have a proper overview sometime. When it comes to teaching myself, I must say that the greatest joy I get from teaching is actually teaching inmates and former drug addicts who have really struggled, because the turning point when they actually feel connected to yoga, it's so imminent and strong and so enjoyable to see when something new light up in them. Yoga is, of course, pop culture now, and everybody has an idea of how it's going to be, and it's fashionable and all of that. And when things become very trendy, we kind of get caught up in the ideas and fanciness of things. But to me, I like the simplicity of things, and I feel that these people who didn't really seek out the yoga class, like these inmates and drug addicts, they didn't really want to come to yoga in the first place, but they were kind of tricked into it by us coming to prison or to the kind of rehab institution. And when they try it, and when we see the changes happening in them, that is kind of one of the most enjoyable things I have done. And I feel very grateful for that.
it's so different to teaching like a regular yoga class, you know, when then you look on your Instagram and all your students are in Lululemon or whatever posting handstand pictures of themselves. And, you know, and you're teaching these guys, you know, and they didn't, you know, it's like they're very much outside the trend of yoga, aren't they? You know, so it is going back to the start again, you know, like when.
Yeah. But it becomes something pure and simple, you know, when somebody don't go look for it and then present it with it, and they really felt, wow, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I try this before? Then it's kind of knife proof that this is working.
Fantastic.
But one thing I would say, like my greatest challenge with running the project now is, of course, having time to, you know, deepen my own studies and in the field of, you know, psychology and trauma and understanding this whole kind of field of, you know, the brutalized and the suffering mind. You know, I didn't have a background in psychology or psychiatry. My background was just yoga and personal experiences of feeling lost, bewildered, and confused in my youth and up to late 20s. So I'm just kind of leaning on those past experiences and the little study I did of yoga, which is like my guiding tool in this. But I also feel I would like to, you know, deepen my study and learning. Sometimes it's not enough just going by practical experience. You need to broaden your horizon a bit, you know. So
that's what I was going to say. Do you use other tools? I mean, like, did you start in a certain way and have you amended your teaching? And not just the physical aspect of it, but your whole approach to teaching from the way that you started or the thoughts you had about how you would do it at the start. How has that changed?
Oh, definitely. In the beginning, I would just try to teach like they did in Mysore, you know, and I tried to copy how I saw Guruji or Sharat were doing, you know, but then that didn't just feel, I still very much keep a consistency with the counts and focus on the rhythm of the breath that carries people through the practice. But you know, I also trust my intuition. I try to see people and stop and pause and feel the presence in the room. And maybe that's something that comes with experience. You know, sometimes you need to stop and have a laugh, or maybe focus on a few things and just relax. Don't be in a fixed way.
I assumed you were doing a lead class. That's right. You're doing lead classes, not Mysore style with them.
Yeah, lead classes. But with the more experienced people, we do Mysore style. We do, definitely. Because I feel that is definitely the best way of going deeper into a personal practice. But with all the beginners, we always teach lead class.
How do you broaden it after that? So they start with this, and then what's the process after they've done it for a while? And I mean, do you introduce any pranayama or philosophy? And then when they get out, like you said, you mentioned what you called 40 Towers before, your hotel in the mountains.
But 40 Towers and Towers of Norway.
Yeah. That's a great show. What's the process over time with this? I mean, some of them become teachers. I mean, how do these get supported?
Yeah, a lot of the people who've been to prison, we given an opportunity to say, look, if you want to, get a break and kind of build up your life again and do something different and bring in new environment, you're welcome to come and stay with us at Nøsen. And then they come, and for that we don't really get any support from the government, but they help us a bit with the daily duties and tasks at Nøsen.
So you have guests there? Do you have paying guests there?
Oh yeah, we have paying guests of like high end west end of Oslo sometimes. So sometimes there's some kind of snooty ladies looking at these kind of crooked ex-heroin addicts staying in the bar serving coffee. So, but the funny thing is that it's a very Nösen is just a beautiful place for tolerance of mix of people. A lot of people who come to Nösen say they third times like, my God, I'm in the same room as an inmate or an ex-heroin addict. They feel like, oh, because they have seen them on television, or some of them have been on in media for something.
Oh, really?
But then after some time, it's always a very good experience and a very good meeting, because it's room to be as you are. Don't try to pretend. Don't be any different as you are. And a lot of people are just longing to be. And one very kind of quite wealthy woman from Oslo who had spent a lot of time walking in visiting various hotels. He said, I really like coming to Nösen because there I could walk in my pajamas all day and nobody would even notice. So they kind of...
I didn't realize it's a regular hotel.
It's a place
but the inmates are kind of helping out at it, right?
Yes. To answer your questions, like when an inmate is some of the inmates we have been working with, we give them the opportunity to come to Nösen and to simply spend 3 to 6 months there. Some people spend like 3-4 years there. We had people spend like 4 years at Nösen, and then some of them move on. They get a job somewhere. They fall in love with somebody maybe who come to Nösen. They meet, and then they move on with their life.
Looks wonderful. Yeah, I'm certainly coming.
It would be great. You're more than welcome to, and we'd love to host you, and then you can have a workshop also if you like. But I must also say, I would like to say, Adam, that also it's very, very challenging sometimes having a group of ex-drug addicts or some inmates at Nösen. Most of them are doing a fabulous time. But some of them also, they had ADHD disorders and they have various diagnoses. And some of them have never worked before. Right. And when we have everybody have to help out for like 5 to 6 hours a day with various chores and try to do something. And of course, when some people are not so motivated to work and they are, whatever duty and responsibilities they are given, they do it with a lack of awareness. Then sometimes it can be a little tiring in the following up. I
think of being very diplomatic and polite about it all.
Yeah, but we have weekly meetings for the back in the ring people at Nösen, and we always try to sit down and talk in a group once or twice a week and discuss things and debate things and try to help people understand very clearly the principles that we stand for. We have classes on the Bhagavad Gita every day or some yoga philosophy every day, and we make them prepare also. Like we give them the task to inquire into topics such as Dharma. What is Dharma? What is Karma Yoga, Gnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, etc. Or they're giving a chapter from the Yoga Sutras or Bhagavad Gita and try to present certain of the things that is in there. And that also helped them to focus and to learn the yoga philosophy a little better.
Have you ever, I suppose something, or maybe it's difficult to kind of phrase this question correctly, but at any points have you felt to yourself that is it a difficulty knowing the crimes that people have committed, and you feel you're rehabilitating them, you're offering them yoga, you're offering them, have you ever felt a discrepancy between yourself and feeling that, any kind of difficulty, or has it always been simply that love flowing from you to them?
No, definitely.
No. I mean, to speak honestly as such, obviously they're in there for terrible crimes and we're offering them something that's very, very beautiful. But I mean, there's got to be punishment as well, and to a certain degree, right?
Well, to be honest, of course, I try my best. I don't want to know the crimes that they have done because I feel it affects my whole kind of. When they are released from prison, they always tell, before they come to Nøsen, they have to tell me everything.
Right.
And I sit down with them and stuff. But prior to their release, sometimes I don't want to know unless it's someone who's in there for a very long time and they're known in the press or whatever. Then I don't really know about it, and I don't want to know about it because it kind of affects our whole relationship. But of course, I have worked with people who are pedophile, people who have done triple murders, people who've done serious rape, and of course it's hard. But as long as they come to yoga class and as long as they are willing to, I see that sincerity in them, that they want to bring about change. Then I my duty is to stand there with open arms and just embrace them. And I try to do that. But of course, sometimes I am affected by the seriousness of their crime because some people have been in prison for 20 years and then they're released and suddenly they want to come to Nøsen and hang out there. And of course, I have to be careful that these people are really mature and they are fit for that because we have our responsibility towards other guests that's come. We're taking a wild chance by offering some of these people to stay and live with us at Nøsen. And for normal people, that is just crazy. You're not supposed to live in a house where there's ex-drug addicts and inmates. But and I mean, some of them they stayed in a house outside of Nøsen, just right next door. But still, they are there and they're working with. They meet all our guests all the time. But for me, I believe in giving people a second chance because I was giving a second chance. I never killed anybody or raped anybody or did anything serious, but I was, I unfortunately, I beat quite a few people up in my youth. I stole a lot of things. I was a thief. I blew up a lot of safes. I was very close to doing a few armed robberies, but luckily I didn't. And I know how easily it is to lose your mind in various silly patterns. And when somebody give you a hand and if you're ready to make a change, then it's just wonderful to take that opportunity. And I was given that opportunity with yoga, and I feel just very, very grateful and privileged to bring about service through humanity or whatever to yoga. Although it's not me. I can't say that I am doing something great because I'm still lost, bewildered, and confused in my mind, and I got sidetracked and then caught up in my selfish patterns. And sometimes I argue with my wife and all of these things. But the beauty of yoga when it's good and we can put our selfish patterns aside, there is a refined element that work within us and transform us and lift us up. And if you can lift people up who is drowning, that shows the strength of yoga.
Has it changed your viewpoint of yoga at all? Or maybe pragmatized it? Because I know you were very, let's say, high-end at one point. I'm very, very scholarly with the yoga, right? Your reputation for yoga philosophy on a big scale. I mean, this seems a very, very different kind of Alex, a very much more down-to-earth and pragmatic take on the yoga. Has it changed your view or your presentation in your own mind of what you're doing here now?
Well, to me, yoga is not a form. Yoga is not just one method. Yoga is life, and yoga is like trying to open up to life in the things that we do. And we need to be flexible with life. If we become stiff and rigid, we get lost in our own patterning and we end up confused and bewildered. So my patterns of teaching has definitely changed from being very rigid and stiff and a little arrogant from when you know a little bit. You think you know it all, and I've just learned that how important it is to be just open to and flexible to the moment, and to see people from where they are, rather than to fit people into categories or boxes or norms, and have all these preconceptions. To me, with teaching now more and more, I try to listen, and I try to see people, and I try to understand people, and I don't care one diddly bit about how I look or what I say, who I am. I try more to really just listen and to other people. In that moment, there is a presence, and when we tune ourselves into steadiness, there is a clarity that is brought about, which is very supporting to how to teach a class. And I don't feel there is a fixed way of teaching anymore. I think, to me, yoga is every moment of the day, and learning to embrace that moment with steadiness. And
you're still teaching the Ashtanga system, right? So you're teaching I'm assuming that you're not saying, "Oh, do what you fancy now." Like, "Oh, you like that one? Do that one."
No. I'm a very... Yeah. Part of me is very much a traditionalist. I have been. It's just part of my DNA, because that's the way I was taught and trained. But I'm also flexible for, like, now I have a greater appreciation for other styles of yoga. Before, I thought Ashtanga was always the best, and now I'm more interested in wanting to explore and understand other styles, because I believe that yoga is in everything. I think whatever you do in your profession, or being an athlete, or being a mother, there's an element of yoga, and that element of yoga in daily life is much more interesting to me than just the form and the norm of it.
Do you think that the whole experience has changed you much personally?
The experience of yoga, or experience with working?
Well, I'm not talking no, the experience of what you've been doing. The experience of teaching the inmates. That would be,
First of all, it gave me, I think, when I was teaching workshops abroad and things like that, it was always satisfying. But teaching yoga to inmates and people in prison gave me a deeper sense of meaning and connectedness with people. And it started to kind of remind me how easily it is to slip and slide and get lost and sidetracked in life. And so to me, maybe it has changed my understanding for people, and learning to embrace change, and first and foremost, that my empathy for other people have become a lot stronger. Unfortunately, that wasn't my strongest side before, which is sad to admit, but
but not at all. It's brought out a greater honesty in you, and that's fantastic.
I think that warmth and compassion towards other people. That's there's so much strength that comes from that. When we make more time really trying to understand others and inquiring into their ideas and their concept, something in us expands and awakens. When we are just like defending our own view and being caught up in ourself, our ego mechanisms, then it's so easy to get lost and end up lonely. And that's probably the greatest thing that I've seen with giving this back to the inmates and guys in prisons, that there's new perspectives that develop that lift us up and bring about a positive change and give hope.
What can you see is the most successful element of the practice in kind of changing their perspective? Or who can you who succeeds and why? Is there an element of devotion that you can kind of see in the practice, or is it the vinyasa count, or is there anything?
No. I think that the successful element is those who take personal responsibility for the practice, and the people who is really willing to put their head on the kind of chopping block and to recognize how they are lost and how they those are the people who show humility and they can see how that I myself as an individual are responsible for everything that has happened to me. There's nobody else. So taking personal responsibility. Those are the people who succeed the best in our programs, and that's our very focus also, to try to facilitate that personal responsibility and doership, and how everybody has to take responsibility for their own action. And of course, we integrate a lot of philosophy from the Bhagavad Gita and from classical yoga philosophy in that very aspect. See how we're all caught up in patterns, but something remains steady inside. Something remains this internal observer, and how do we polish that? And
they can see that. You find that when you present that, they can grasp that immediately.
And no, we have to, of course, support it with a lot of yoga philosophy. Without the yoga philosophy, it just becomes a physical practice that gives them a feel-good factor. But I believe the yoga philosophy is very, very important, and we couldn't have done the work we could without that support from the yoga philosophy, because then it would have just been like a physical practice to feel good, and
Should we leave it there, or do you have anything particular else you'd like to end with?
No, there's so much. It's just really nice talking to you, Adam. It's hard to to come. Just there's many stories and many things.
I'm sure. But generally, I can't believe. I mean, one thing I'm going to say at the end is I can't believe nothing's gone badly wrong. Like with this, I mean, when you're reflecting on running the hotel with the inmates, I'm just kind of amazed that you're doing this and it's successful in the way it has been.
I must say that, Adam, like our work hasn't all been success stories. There's people we have worked that has relapsed seriously and got it back in drugs. And the sad thing is that, that is part of our journey. And unfortunately, there's some people that we work with, they've done a fantastic job and they ended up as yoga teacher, and still some of them slipped back into drugs, and the hard thing was not when they were down and difficult and to turn them around. That was easier, is to kind of to keep the humility with life when things started to really go well. It's like when people get, and that's a general problem with life, we get too caught up in ourselves, wanting to be somebody, living an image or whatever. And then sometimes we just, before we know it, we're, we drink a few beers again, and we smoke a few joints, and then you sniff a few lines, and then if you pop a few pills, and then boom, it's like the turmoil is back. And let's face it, some people has a very, serious addiction pattern, and other people, the change comes a lot easier. And some people are seriously traumatized, and other people are not. And so, it's very different how people respond to it. But one thing I must say is like, we, the teachers in Back in the Ring, particularly me, I've learned so much, working with this over the last 10 years.
I bet you have. Yeah.
I instead of having a fixed idea of how you want things to be or how people are supposed to progress and improve, you have to see people for what they are and let them come in their own time. You know, it's all about the personal responsibility. And if you can give that to people and lift them up by that, then the work start to happen. And then the change may eventually come.
Just not having kind of clear ideas about what you're going to give them as such. Yeah?
No, you can have all the concept and ideas and belief of how you want life to be, but it never really turned out that way. So, you know, being flexible and steady, and really, to me, yoga is steadiness. It's building a steadiness within our life, within our mind, within our I
got a final question for you, Alex. You've done so many things and you've had so many incarnations over all the years, and you're someone who really fascinates me personally. What is the next one? Where do you see yourself going next? What are you going to do next to surprise everyone? For the next time? Something the opposite again.
Well, to be honest with you, like right now, I'm in the middle of 7 series. I have a 2-year-old at home, and we have also, my wife have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old from before. So it's kind of hard work, but I wouldn't mind getting another, 1 or 2 more children. That is just so beautiful. And that is, like Oscar has taught me so much. And to me, that is something truly beautiful. Like my wife is 42 now. I don't know if she can handle it, but that's something I'm trying to persuade her to. But the next level, as far as career-wise or yoga-wise, I don't really have any. I just want to try to, like Nøsen, I want to give it another 10, 15 years and develop the place as good as I can, and then give it over to somebody else who can run it, and try to let that kind of services and the legacy we have there move on. And then I think I would really like to spend some more time going back into more Sanskrit studies and some writing. But, life, when you get caught up in all these things, like the days has its limits, and it's, I end up doing a lot of stuff half-heartedly rather than as thoroughly as I would like to do. But one thing, there's always a longing to, there's certainly a longing to go deeper into some study of philosophy and some study of sciences, and particularly psychology, and, just the kind of the human mind. It fascinates me. But then there's also a time to relax in life, and like I'm 52 years old now. I'm very grateful for life, and I feel yoga has given me everything. Yoga has lifted me up and transformed me, and just gave me my life back again. So I just want to be of some kind of service to yoga in whatever way I can, and if I can be that, I'm more than happy. I don't need anything else.
It's nice. I usually ask, what do you like to do outside yoga? But I think you're taken up enough.
Outside of yoga, well, I live in the mountains, so I like walking in the mountains. A lot of people say when you're a yoga practitioner, oh, you can't do any sports. You can't. I love doing sports. I love cycling. I love cross-country skiing. I love alpine skiing. So that really gives me a lot of joy. Playful activities makes me young and playful. And of course, I have my daily yoga practice, which I really enjoy, and I feel very grateful for. But of course, it's not as good and sharp as it used to be, so that's, if it was, I'd probably be more on Instagram and post more pictures. But
yes, that's the thing.
But it's still very satisfying mentally.
All right. Well, it's been wonderful to talk to you again, and I look forward to a third one soon with you. All right. Thanks, Alex.
Anytime, Adam. Very nice. Thank you for the conversation.